Like everyone else, I was really excited when Blackmagic announced that they are finally making a box camera at NAB last spring. While it was a little frustrating that it took so long to get to the market, but let's get over that because it's here now, and let's dive into a new era of Blackmagic cameras. The Pyxis resolves most of the nagging issues I've had with previous Blackmagic cameras. It's not perfect, but it's a big step forward in a lot of ways. I've had the camera, the top handle, and the Ursa Sen EVF for about a month now, and in this review I'll go over my experience with this camera, and I'll show you how it looks on a gimbal with the DJI Focus Pro and a number of other rigging configurations. I'll share my honest opinions with you so you can determine if this camera will fit your needs. I've owned nearly all of the Blackmagic cameras at one time or another, including the full frame pocket camera. And that's the camera that the Pyxis shares the sensor with. I was really impressed with the image quality of that camera, but I'm also keenly aware of the limitations of both the pocket and the Ursa line of cameras. And we'll really explore if Blackmagic has fixed a number of those shortcomings to make the Pyxis a success. Let's just quickly go over what comes in the box and thus what you'll need to be up and shooting. This camera comes with an AC adapter and a side plate that can be used to mount a SSD or a phone for streaming. It screws into the side of the camera and has two little Velcro loops. It does not come with a BPU battery for powering the camera, and plugging in the AC adapter will not charge a battery, so you're going to need an external charging option. Also, it does not have an HDMI out. It uses SDI, so you'll need an SDI monitor or the Blackmagic Pyxis monitor, which uses the front locking USB-C port for image and power. Why were so many folks clamoring for Blackmagic to release a box camera? I believe the main reason is that a lot of us love B-raw, but we've been unsatisfied in one way or another with Blackmagic's previous cameras and/or using another brand of camera with one of the video assist recorders. The pocket cameras have terrible battery life, an antiquated SLR design that is too difficult to work with, and the Ursa line feels too big and bulky. While you can use a number of mirrorless cameras with the 12G video assist recorders, they also have terrible battery life and are way too big and bulky. Box cameras give us, as users, the ability to finish the design however we'd like that best serves our purposes, and because of that modularity, they can be adapted for a wide variety of uses. It's not always clear how to rig a box camera so that it best fits our needs. I tend to try what I have laying around in the studio first, which more often than not is not the best choice. And this can often skew our opinion on a camera as a whole. I think Blackmagic got feedback on how the original prototype testers ended up rigging the camera and realized that this camera would be more successful and well received if it had a dedicated monitor with camera control that could get both power and image from the USB-C port, just like the EVF. I say this because it took so long for this camera to get to the market, and Blackmagic seems so anxious to announce it. I think that Blackmagic would have definitely announced the monitor with the camera if it had already been in the works. At this point, the Pyxis monitor has still not shipped, but I've had the EVF for over a month, and that connects using the same front USB-C port, which allows you to control the camera. And the Pyxis monitor was designed to be interchangeable with the EVF's mounting hardware, so it's really easy to imagine what this rig will look like when swapping the monitor in for the EVF. Having used the Ronin 4D for a number of years now, I can tell you that the one single USB-C cord for image and power is so much better than using SDI cables with additional batteries. Also, after trying numerous box cameras over the years, the one that I really enjoyed working with also had a dedicated monitor with camera control that used a single cord, and that was the Zcam E2 F6 Pro. It may seem a little trivial, but all of these little extra items add up. Instead of having something small and neat that is easy to travel with, you end up with something that you'd rather leave in the car or at home. I know the monitor hasn't shipped yet, so if you need to have an external one to get up and running or plan on using the EVF with a monitor, I can recommend this 6-inch SDI monitor from Viltrox. It's a great fit for this camera. It has decent color accuracy, it's solidly built while also being lightweight, it's super bright and really easy to control. One hidden feature about this thing, it has USB-C power delivery, so you actually can power it from the front port of the Pyxis. According to Blackmagic, this EVF will also work with other cameras, which will make it a lot more valuable to me. On the back, it has 6 programmable buttons that you can change in the Pyxis menu. This is one of the best, if not the best, EVF mounts I've used. It's really easy to adjust everything to get it just where you want it, and it will stay in place and won't work its way loose. It does come with this mount extension that was designed for the Ursa Sin. The EVF also adds a front tally light, and the Pyxis at the moment does not really have a big bright one. It's sort of hard to see if you're recording or not. The EVF isn't perfect, and I've had a few issues with it. First off, it doesn't have other mounting options besides this little mini RE dovetail on the right side. And this is kind of surprising if it's really going to work with other camera systems. You can't even mount the dovetail on the left side of the EVF. And they didn't even add a 1/4-20 mounting points, which makes me harder to think about rigging this up with another camera. Another anomaly is this big crossbar. It's actually 19 millimeters. So if you want to use that bar to mount a mic or a light, you'll need one of these little clamps. I found these 19 millimeter clamps from Camvite. I'll put the link below. Can't use the EVF and the Pyxis monitor at the same time. Only the front USB-C port works and can be used. It's one or the other with the Pyxis for now. I did manage to mount an external monitor with the top handle and the EVF using another 15 millimeter rod clamp to monitor mount. To me, it seems like if you're one of those people that really likes having an EVF, maybe one of those little magnetic optical viewfinders that you can pop on and off the monitor would make a little bit more sense. This camera doesn't necessarily need a cage. That being said, I'm sure there are plenty of people that want one and need a cage for their work, and there are a few already on the market. There's the full metal jacket from XLCS. This is the one I ended up getting, although it is a little heavy. Shape and Condor Blue also have cages and are more modular. They also have these little bibs on the side for mounting handles and or monitors. This is the Blackmagic top handle. Officially, it's the Ursa Sin top handle. It's inherited some good and some bad things from the previous Ursa top handle. The good is that it's really solid. I personally prefer these D-ring style top handles, and it's also got that nice soft rubber coating on the inside. There are way too many top handles on the market that, while being practical and adding a lot of mounting options, seem to forget their practical purpose of being used to carry something heavy. Blackmagic maybe skews the other way too far. While it's comfortable, the only mounting points are these two 3/8 on top. However, it does have this little slot on the front where you slide in a 15 millimeter rod clamp, and that's where the EVF or mount monitor attaches. The top handle and EVF mount are really well made, and everything stays in place, but like the EVF, the top handle was only designed to be used in one way. This is Blackmagic's design language, a simple, minimal approach where things work really well on one way, but are hard to configure for any other style of shooting. While these items fit on the Pyxis, they are still called, quote unquote, the Ursa Sin versions of those items. And if the Pyxis is supposed to be the most riggable camera that Blackmagic has ever made, I really think it should start to get its own accessories instead of retrofitting the Ursa Sin parts onto it. Outside of the monitor, which gets the Pyxis name, these items are not priced like they are to be a piece of support for a $3,000 camera. They're priced like they are pieces of support for a $15,000 camera. I hope we see Blackmagic make more items like the Pyxis monitor that has more flexibility in where you could place them and also is priced accordingly. One thing that hasn't been released as of yet is a side handle from Blackmagic similar to the Ursa side handles of the past. This camera does not have a LANIC connection, so the Ursa side handles from the past won't work with it. This is great because LANIC is an old and unsophisticated piece of technology, and because of that, it's really limited the functions that we could assign to a side handle. The DJI Focus Pro handle connects via Bluetooth, and I can confirm it does work with the Pyxis, even though on paper it's only supposed to be compatible with the Pocket 6K. So for the time being, this is the only side or top handle I know that can actually stop or start recording. I saw a lot of people worrying about the power draw numbers when the specs of this camera were announced and thinking that this camera would tear through batteries, but those people were off base. I've used all three sizes, and even the smallest 30 watt hour gives you about an hour of runtime. These batteries are also pretty inexpensive. I bought 2 of the 90s, a 60 and 4 of the 30 watt hour batteries, and an external charger, and that all cost me under $300. And I'll put links below to the K-Star batteries that I found and have been happy with. At first I didn't like the shallowness of this battery bay, but now I can see that it's actually a good place to counterbalance what could be a really heavy Sen lens on the front. Here's how the camera bay looks with the various BPU batteries mounted. Here's the 30, the 60, and the 90. If your budget limits you to choosing one size, I think I would go with the 60 watt-hour, especially if you plan on getting the Pyxis monitor, which will add to the power draw of the camera. Although I didn't notice much of a drop in capacity while running the EVF. The bottom line is the full frame sensor Blackmagic cameras can make better images than the Super 35 Blackmagic cameras. Having more room for each photo site has always been a recipe for success across the camera industry. And it's not surprising that Blackmagic could make a better image with a bigger sensor. I was also surprised that the Pyxis image quality seems better than the Pocket full frame camera. I was a little dumbfounded and thought I was just excited about the new camera when I first got it, but now I'm pretty sure it's true. My friend put it in an interesting way, talking about the A7S III and the FX3. With more time put tweaking the image from the same sensor, Sony continued to improve the image quality. And obviously there are a ton of points along the way where Blackmagic could be doing something totally different with this camera they couldn't do in the smaller SLR style body. Even if I'm suffering confirmation bias, the improved ergonomics, battery life, and flexibility of the Pyxis make it worth the money to upgrade. There are some important trade-offs that we will talk about next to consider, but if your main concern is image quality, you won't be disappointed with this camera. The one recording mode the Pyxis was lacking to me was 120 frames per second using the full width of the sensor. And really anything over 60 frames per second starts to eat into the sensor space. Cropping into the image degrades the quality of the image, and the windowed versions of the sensor over Super 35 are really not usable. Obviously only you know if you need 120 frames per second or 4x slow motion. The other major gripe people had with the Pyxis when it came out is its lack of internal neutral density. I found this is something that's obviously nice to have, but it's really not difficult or expensive to add. There are options for adding neutral density to this camera. My plan was to use EF2L adapters that had Varian D in them. I used this little PhotoDX one. I also use this Nisi magnetic front mount when I'm using native L-mount glass. There's also the Mofage Poco adapter that allows you to use RPL glass on L-mount cameras, and those have drop-in filters, so you can switch up or remove the filter should you not need it. I would really prefer that the EF ones have this as well, but as of right now, there's no EF2L adapter on the market that has drop-in filters. The side screen was another point of contention when this camera was announced. For me, the main function for now is just to change camera settings. When you're working from behind the camera, it's definitely awkward to have to turn to the side to change stuff on this camera. The Pyxis monitor will be a much better solution for interacting with the camera. Also, there's no differentiation in shape, size, and feel of these buttons, and they're all spaced together on the sides, so you have to peek around every time to see what you're touching. I think the next iterations of this camera, Blackmagic, would be smart to space and shape these buttons a little differently so you could have some idea what you're touching without having to look around every time. In a way, with the side screen, I think Blackmagic is acknowledging that the way we are using cameras is changing, and more than ever before, people are operating a camera from the front, in which case this side panel makes a lot more sense. I also suspected that it would work really well for vertical capture, and after shooting with it for a few weeks now, I'm pretty sure this is why Blackmagic used the really high bright HDR screen. It's a really interesting feature that I haven't seen on any other camera, and we all get asked for vertical video, and maybe it's part of why Blackmagic says the Pyxis is the most riggable camera ever. I'm really loving the combination of the DJI Focus Pro and this camera. The side handle connects to the Pyxis so you can stop and start recording, and obviously add autofocus to your cinema lenses. This camera is really easy to rig on a gimbal. This is what the camera looks like mounted on a RS4 Pro. It's really easy to balance and connects wirelessly via Bluetooth for camera control. This camera is also great for live streaming or PTZ camera because it's improved port connections. Blackmagic has the Micro Studio G2, but that doesn't even have an Ethernet connection and has a Micro Four Thirds sensor. This camera also has built-in SRT and RTMP live streaming, so you can stream live just by plugging in your phone. The Pyxis is a huge win for Blackmagic. I finally feel like I have a camera that shoots B-raw internally that I want to use. Blackmagic gave us a neutral ergonomic starting point with higher capacity batteries. This solid base empowers us to finish the design so we end up with the camera that we want, one that is fun to use. By adding the Pyxis monitor, Blackmagic made it easier to rig this camera up for a number of different shooting scenarios without losing its compact form factor. Instead of a rig covered in tangled wires that require numerous external parts like batteries and SSD drives, we have dual CF Express B slots and a single USB-C locking cable for power and image. This camera isn't perfect, it lacks internal ND and full sensor 120 frames per second. But the L mount gives us the ability to use both EF and PL lenses, and we can add ND in the mount converter. So if you're one of those people that loves B-raw but were unhappy with Blackmagic cameras for one reason or another, I can definitely recommend this camera. Thanks for watching. If you got something out of this video, please take time to like and comment. And for more gear reviews like this, please subscribe.